Thanks for joining us again. Tom Atkins week continues to roll on, Jared. We gave the people a lot of Atkins in the last film. Nobody would say too much Atkins.
Gave the people what they want.
Exactly. We gave kind of peak Atkins. Well, not quite peak. He peaked a couple of years before Maniac Cop, but, we got a bit of a solid performance from Atkins. We got him at his most charismatic. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, Jared. Imagine if we'd have done Night of the Creeps, The Fog, and Halloween 3 in a sitting.
Oh,
I mean, that's too much charisma for anyone.
We couldn't have taken it. We couldn't have handled it. The charisma would have just knocked us off our feet, and we wouldn't have been able to finish Atkins week. So we had to just take a small hit of charisma and then sort of taper off a little bit.
Yeah, it was like we took a heavy hit with Maniac Cop, and now we're just kind of coming down a little bit with these next two films.
Yeah,
which are more what I would consider cameo Atkins. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Not a lot of Atkins, but as per usual, what he does is all class.
Of course.
So tonight's film is 1981's Escape from New York by Mr. John Carpenter. So let's just skip through all the usual stuff, and here we'll take a break. Here's the trailer to Escape from New York.
1988. The crime rate in the United States rises 400%. 1991. The United States Police Force is formed. 1997. New York City is a walled maximum security prison. John Carpenter's Escape from New York. Kurt Russell. Lee Van Cleef. Ernest Borgnine. Donald Pleasance. Isaac Hayes. Susan Hughley. Harry Dean Stanton as Brain. And Adrienne Barbeau as Maggie. John Carpenter's Escape from New York. The ultimate adventure of escape and survival.
Escape from New York, written and directed by John Carpenter, who of course gave us Halloween, produced by Deborah Hill, who produced The Fog, and Larry Franco, who produced White House Down. It's written by John Carpenter and Michael Myers himself, Nick Castle, who also wrote The Boy Who Could Fly. It stars Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken, Lee Van Cleef as Hawk, Ernest Borgnine as Cabby, Donald Pleasance as the President, and Tom Atkins as Remy. The budget was $6 million and it made $25 million worldwide. The opening narration and the computer's voice in the first of the prison scenes are actually provided by an uncredited Jamie Lee Curtis. Look, I had not seen Escape from New York in some time, and I'm talking probably about 30 years.
Jesus.
Essentially, I remember seeing it a long time ago when I was a young man.
Yep.
And hadn't really revisited it in a while. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It's a pretty good sci-fi action sort of flick. It's kind of forgotten amongst Carpenter's 70s and 80s output a little bit. Everyone talks Halloween, everyone talks The Thing. Not as much talk about Escape from New York. It's a really good idea, and it's supported by, I think, a pretty solid sort of anti-hero in Plissken. It has some nice sort of thriller beats and some, of course, brief but very impressive performance from Tom Atkins. But the lack of budget actually shines through a little bit, and there's also Carpenter's kind of lack of action chops as a director kind of comes through a little bit as well. But certainly didn't dampen my enthusiasm for the whole thing, and I gave it 3.5.
I ended up at exactly the same. I had seen it more recently. It's a funny one. I've gone back and forth on it. The first time I saw it, I wasn't impressed at all. And then I revisited it again not that long ago and really enjoyed it. Also picked up the sort of the special edition Blu-ray with a lot of features that had dropped just recently. So this was I think this was the fourth time I've watched it. And I was expecting, based on the last time, I thought I'd probably end up at about a 4. But you're right, a couple of the things that sort of hurt it were a little more apparent to me this time around. So I went for a 3.5 as well. I think you're right. I think that the premise is just excellent.
Yeah.
It's a spot-on action movie premise. And as you said, a really solid lead character with a very, very good actor in that role. But the other actors that are sprinkled throughout it are also top-notch. As you said, this one kind of goes forgotten, but this is quite possibly the deepest cast that Carpenter's ever had. And that's saying something, because he gets good performers, but this has got the Carpenter regulars as well as a couple of extra sprinkled in there. I mean, Tom Atkins alone, that puts you right up the top of the pile, but then you sprinkle in some Harry Dean Stanton and some Lee Van Cleef, and the cast is excellent. The downfall for me this time around is that I did notice a bit more of, as you mentioned, the sort of budgetary issues. There's times when it doesn't have to be New York. It could just be any old urban setting. And I think that really hurts it, that it doesn't sort of get to show you the scope of New York.
Yeah.
And unlike most of Carpenter's work, there is a bit of slow burn here, a little bit of build-up, but there's also these dull patches that I just don't find in that classic Carpenter. You know, we're talking the Halloweens, you know, The Thing, even The Fog and They Live, for me, doesn't have the dull patches that this one does.
Yeah, and I think I can probably put my finger on why that is that action films require frenetic, explosive set piece, you know. The best action films always had, certainly the best action films during this year. I mean, to give Carpenter cut him a little bit of slack, it was 1981, you know, and we hadn't yet to get to that sort of golden period in the late 80s of action films where we kind of got the balance between frenetic action and, you know, story. So the story's there. But the problem that Carpenter's direction brings is similar to what works in Halloween and The Thing. And that is slow build, drag it out, you know, build the suspense and atmosphere.
Even then, though,
I don't think do that in an action film.
I don't think the story is all that much there either. There is elements, but as I said, there's a couple of flat spots.
Once you get inside, inside Manhattan.
Yeah, there's a couple of flat spots where it doesn't feel like too much is going on. And I mean, you're right, we hadn't hit the diehards yet. We hadn't really set the template for what we now know as an action movie. But we had come from westerns where you got similar sort of action, you got similar things of someone having to get into somewhere that they're not welcome and they're going to get shot if they go in there and things like that have done it better than this. So yeah. I don't know if it's just necessarily the set pieces and things like that. I just don't think it's Carpenter's strongest. But that's not to say it's bad. It's very enjoyable. But I just feel there's those few sort of flat spots, and I think those other films that I mentioned that Carpenter did, they never really failed to grip you almost all the way through. So that's probably why I've dropped to a 3.5. I mean, even on his bad days, he's still miles better than you'd still rather watch a John Carpenter film than 95% of other people's films. So, you know.
I would agree.
There's still plenty of positives to talk about.
Oh, yeah, and going straight into it, you mentioned the cast. I believe you called it the Department of Charisma.
Yeah.
And you're
I mean, with
spot on.
Lee Van Cleef, Tom Atkins running around, the Federal Bureau of Charisma is really sort of. But, I mean, I don't know how
And
they
the Department of the Department of Charisma with Pliskin and co.
Yeah, you can see why there was only a couple of them in there, because you couldn't have too many of them in there without sort of messing things up. You only needed a certain amount of take charge.
Quite frankly, we
charisma
were
in
right
there.
on a knife's edge, Jared.
Yeah.
We were on a knife's edge. Another scene of Atkins, and it tips the wrong way on that knife.
Exactly.
And it's got too much charisma. It's overloaded charisma.
Yeah,
But the cast is fantastic.
it is. It's excellent.
I mean, Kurt Russell, for starters,
Yep.
is fantastic in this role. And I think it's his favourite. I think he said that on the commentary he does for the Blu-ray, that this is his favourite role that he's ever done. And you can kind of see it. It's one of those anti-hero roles that I think really works. But then get down to Lee Van Cleef, you've got Tom Atkins. I mean, shit, need I say more on that front? Donald Pleasance, Isaac Hayes, Harry Dean Stanton.
Ernest
You've got,
Borgnine.
Ernest Borgnine, who I really liked. I actually thought Ernest Borgnine was really cool in those couple of little scenes we got of him.
Yeah.
And then you throw in people like, Adrian Barbeau, Charles Cyphers in the background. I mean, Cyphers says pretty much fuck all until the last couple of minutes.
Yeah.
There's a number of scenes where you just see Cyphers hovering around the background, and I'm waiting for him to say something.
Yep.
And he's fucking mute.
Yeah. He's just standing
What are
there.
you doing here?
Yeah, I think even that Frank Doubleday character, I mean, I wouldn't say he's like a top-notch actor that you're putting in the same class as those other people, but he's actually really good in it too. Like, he's that creepy-looking bloke that just kind of, every time he's on there, you're sort of like, ugh. Like,
Is he the guy who gets the cassette
yeah.
and then trades it with Cabby?
Yep.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot to like about that cast.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to like about the score as well.
Yes.
I think it's another one of these Carpenter-style scores that synth stuff. And some people might say that, they're a little bit derivative of each other, some of his scores. But it doesn't bother me. I mean, I love that type of stuff.
No, because it's always good sort of moody stuff. He seems to just have a real sense of when it should kick in, when it should ramp up, when it should be that pulsating kind of. He just knows when it works. And I think, this one doesn't. It probably lacks the real memorable kind of stuck in your brain quality that the Halloween theme had, that repetitiveness. But I dig it. I thought it was another really good one. The theme was solid enough, but when it needed to ramp up, he just has a sense of when it should and what it should sound like.
We spoke about the idea of Manhattan Island being turned into a gigantic prison and basically becoming a lawless sort of society unto itself. I just found that to be a really, really awesome idea.
Definitely.
And then toss in the fact that the president has been hijacked and dropped into that place.
Yeah. Well, it's one of these,
and a rescue mission needs to be done. I just think it's as solid an action idea as you'll get.
Yeah, it's one of these ones that's a grand sort of ridiculous premise, but it's just super effective for an action movie. I mean, it immediately gets you like, right, yeah, how are they going to do this? You're interested in how it's going to go down. And yeah, it's very simple, but works a treat for me, especially being that it's set in that futuristic setting and taking one of the most famous cities in the world to set it in. It's just a good idea. I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to make New York a prison, even in the 80s when obviously Jason was roaming around and Maniac Cop was getting around and things were looking pretty rough in New York. But even then it had
Jesus Christ, I'd rather live in fucking Afghanistan.
Even then though, it had potential, didn't it?
I forgot the fucking Maniac Cop was there too. you got Jason there, then you got fucking Maniac Cop running around.
Yeah.
Jesus. The toxic fucking waste.
You can't even jump into the sewers to get away from them. But yeah, it's just great premise. I think it's one of the all-timers. I would actually love to see. I mean, this for me is on remake watch because it's just such a good idea. And with the
no doubt,
with the budgets you would get behind a premise like this now in a movie with a name. I mean, I would love to see this redone with the big budget.
Yeah, and it's ripe to be retold as a remake. And my only concern with it is it's hard to see anyone else. I mean, I know Pliskin only has 2 films. You know, he only has 2 films, and I believe Escape from LA is a disaster. But he kind of sits pretty highly or just below, you know, you guys like Indiana Jones and John McClane and those guys who you can't really see anyone else playing that role.
Yeah, see, this is where I'm a little bit... I don't know. I think Russell is really good, but I don't hold Snake Plissken in that esteem myself.
Really?
Yeah, and that's...
you see him a touch lower?
I see him as a touch lower, so I'd be happy as for someone else to take it on. That's no diss to Kurt Russell, but when I look at it, I'm like... That's Kurt Russell with an eye patch. I don't see Snake Plissken. Which is a bit different to when I watch Die Hard and I see, I see McClane, not Bruce Willis. It's sort of like, I don't know, he falls a little bit differently there for me.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be like someone playing Gabe Cash.
Yeah.
Or Ray Tango.
I mean, if anyone did that, I'd be up in arms. I'd be saying, no, you can't do that. But Snake Plissken's available.
Look, you can do Plisken, but don't even think about going with bloody Cash.
No.
It's off limits.
No, that's right.
Oh, okay, well, maybe I'm being a little over the top there. I mean, agreed. He's not on par. It's not on par with those 2 that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Because it's got a reasonable fan base, I think, this film.
It does, yeah. And I know I'm in the minority.
And some of the hardcore fans might be a little more wary of seeing someone else in the role, but the bottom line is this is ripe for a remake, and Kurt Russell can't play Snake Plissken anymore. So,
and you know what?
You got to go with someone else.
See, here's another reason why I'm open to it. I was reading a little article the other day about Lee Warnell being a possibility as someone that would be in mind, and he spoke about that he would like to cast Wyatt Russell, which I think would be kind of cool.
Not a bad idea.
I think it'd be cool to see.
Yeah, because I read something that Winnell's writing the next draft or something.
Yeah.
Is that not correct?
Well, there hasn't been a lot of news for quite a few months, but I think that was sort of the last that I'd heard.
Because Robert Rodriguez was tipped initially, wasn't he?
Yeah, which I mean, shit. I would love to see his take on this material. I mean, I can't imagine what he would do to New York, but it seemed like it would be good fun. But Lee Warnell's a really good call as well, I think, and especially given.
I think Warnell would be a better choice. Strangely enough, I mean, Rodriguez has more of an action pedigree.
Yeah, but then if you watch,
I think Warnell might take the.
If you watch Upgrade, Warnell's did it very well. You know.
I guess I'm looking at it from the perspective of Warnell seems to dig a little deeper into some of the subtext of some of the movies he's recently made, like The Invisible Man and Upgrade and things like that. And that might be a good thing for this story.
But Upgrade convinced me that he can do action. Like he can definitely do action.
Yeah,
he did a great job with some of the sequences in that.
I mean, getting back to what I was saying, I just think that the whole thing is ripe to be remade just because the idea is rock solid. And it actually, to me, has parallels very much to Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah, definitely.
In a sense that you've got this incredibly awesome idea that's so simple.
Yep.
Precinct 13 is the simplest of stories. Cut off by your own people and forced to protect yourself and, band with the criminals. It's a simple idea, but it works a treat. And also, not a bad remake that was, if I'm not mistaken.
I enjoyed that one.
So I think there's a lot to like about the plot and the premise, and further to it, could actually bring something to a remake and go into some directions that aren't covered here. That's probably one of its negatives, and we'll get to, but I actually didn't mind the opening sequences where you kind of get that voiceover that's saying that once you enter, you don't leave.
Yeah.
And then you have those two guys trying to escape.
Yep.
Across the river.
Mm-hmm.
And they just get blown out of the water. So it was a nice, cool way to showcase that even if you get out, or even if you make a run for it, you kind of no chance of getting out.
There was a really small touch that I thought was, I started cracking up when I heard it, but when Pliskin's being taken through, there's the voiceover about, what's going to happen. The voiceover says, you have the option to be terminated and cremated before going in. Yeah, I might take that one up, actually. It looks like a shit of a place. But yeah, I really like that too, the way they set the tone. And I think sort of tied into that is some of the effects. Considering they didn't have a whole lot to spend, I think they get some really good mileage out of the matte paintings and some of the effects.
Yes.
And they really use them to set the tone and to make some places look like other places. I mean, parts of them, it's bang on.
But also, that's Carpenter. It's a bit of a pat on the back for him in terms of, although New York doesn't, as we get inside the Manhattan Island boundary, it's not quite, the scope's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
To use New York the way you would want.
Correct.
But early on, he tries to set that tone.
He does.
Having those matte paintings and those shots of helicopters flying in front of the skyline and all that stuff.
And does a pretty reasonable job of selling it.
That works well to at least set some tone.
Yep.
That unfortunately gets lost, but we'll get to that.
Mm.
It's great to see the opening shot of the film is a mustache quivering Tom Atkins.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's a subdued action.
His shirt was done up, unfortunately.
It's a subdued Atkins. He's there's no grog or ladies, but he's smoking like a chimney. He's still got a vice.
After we see him there talking to Van Cleef, he then pisses off to have a couple of beers.
Oh, that's right. He knocks off, finishes a 6-pack, comes back in, does what he needs to do to Van Cleef, goes home, on the way stops at a bar and meets a beautiful woman. That's just what he does. I mean, Remy
basically says to her, that's a stupid question. When she says, where would you like to sleep tonight?
They asked Remy if he could do the job, and he said, look, I've got a date tonight, so 24 hours isn't going to work for me. I can give you 2.
Yeah, what's the ratio of ladies? 2 hideous scumbags in there.
Yeah. Look, if we're talking 51% ladies, I could probably be talked into it.
There they go, it's a 40% lady population. I'm out.
Yeah. I think that's how it went down.
I really like the sequence where Pliskin and Hawk come face to face and sit down to discuss the mission.
Yeah.
I really like that. And I think it starts off in that real sort of combative way where he asks to take his handcuffs off. And Hawk just goes, I'm not stupid, because you know that Pliskin's dangerous and if you let him out of the handcuffs, he's going to hurt him.
This is where the casting is an absolute winner because, they put Lee Van Cleef in that particular role, and because of his background in those Western type films and, reputation like a Clint Eastwood type guy, you just get a rep as being a bit of a hard ass for being in those pictures and delivering those roles, and so it kind of legitimizes the kind of Wild West nature of New York. Once you're in there, it's sort of a free for all because Van Cleef is that guy. In some of those old pictures, he's the guy that gets sent in to do that. But in this, he's the guy that's sitting there going, fuck, I've got to find someone else to do it. He doesn't want to do it.
That's right. Exactly.
So it sort of legitimizes that free-for-all nature of when you get in there and the kind of fear about what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I also love it. It just gives us a little bit of exposition about Snake.
Yes.
Without having to kind of show us.
Yeah,
the fact that he was in the Special Forces and he robbed a bank. He robbed the Federal Reserve. That's why he's incarcerated and all that sort of stuff.
Essentially, his entire anti-hero story is set up right there, because the rest of the film, he's just a hero. He does the right things. Yeah. The anti-hero all comes from, you've got that rap sheet and we've had to jam something in your neck to ensure that you won't piss off on us.
Yeah, and it also shows too that he kind of doesn't give a fuck about the president either.
No, that was
he
one of my.
Really want to do this.
That was one of my favourite parts when they, Lee Van Cleef mentioned, you're not going to turn that thing 180 because we've just fucking ensured that that's not going to happen. I mean, I thought that was an absolute cracking line. You could see Snake kind of, he's outsmarted him on that one, and sort of, he's, as you said. That sets up that Snake doesn't care about the job. He just wants he just wants the deal at the end of it.
Yeah, and I did like that.
He wants to join Remy at the bar.
Yeah. But they put those two things in his neck. They create this no way out situation for him, which I really liked. And I also love the ticking clock. I always like the ticking clock in these sorts of films.
Yes.
You got 24 hours to get him there and get him out.
Yep.
And that clock is constant throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really, really... it's simple but effective in any type of thriller.
Yeah. I think it absolutely works.
You can tie that on there.
Correct. I also want to know where we can get one of those escape pods. How high do you think the president bounced when he hit the ground in New York?
Jesus. I mean... didn't have any fucking wings.
That's what I thought when I saw it. I was like, he's just dropping.
Release the pod. Well,
the pod's going to be in the subway.
So what happens? Does it just hit the ground at speed? I mean, quite frankly, he'd probably be dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think that the thing might have got released just as they were hitting Manhattan. Because I think the plane goes down as well.
It's still hitting.
It's not far from the plane.
It's still
crash.
hitting pretty hard. The president's going to be rattled.
He's going to be rattled. Listen, I'm not opening the pod for anybody.
No, exactly. There's got to be a secret knock or something.
There's got to be. I also really like the fact that once Pliskin gets in there, he locates the president's beacon very quickly.
Yeah.
But it's not on the president's hand.
Yeah. Immediate sort of complication.
So immediately, hang on, I now can't find the guy. I can't track him.
Yes.
I've got to find him on my own, and now I'm down to like 20 hours.
Yep.
So I really like that.
I thought that worked well.
I initially was a bit kind of not... I was a little bit taken aback by some of the groups that were in Manhattan. It had a feel like Mad Max.
Yeah.
It's very much like Mad Max 2, actually, the way some of them were dressed and the like.
Mm-hmm.
But I also got kind of used to it and got a bit of a kick out of, like, when Pliskin first arrives there, he turns up at the theatre.
Yeah.
And Borgnine's sitting in the audience watching this weird theatre production going on in front of him and laughing and having a great time. I'm just like, this is so out there.
Yeah.
But it kind of fits what would potentially be going on here.
Yeah, well, it sort of fits the, what they're talking about. Once you go into New York, you're not coming out. So they're sort of setting up this society in there. And I actually like that when he got in there and, you see him in the theatre there and you think, well, if there's that many people in there probably would be someone that wants to see a show eventually or whatever. So these things have kind of developed. As you said, it's like Mad Max. They've developed their own forms of entertainment and things like that, which continues on in that wrestling scene. I really like that one because it was kind of very 80s, but then also had the bats and trash can lids kind of like gladiators as well. It was sort of like this cross between wrestling and a Coliseum kind of vibe. And when the Duke is talking in that one, you mentioned Mad Max. I also got sort of the vibes of the Warriors in that.
Yes, so did I.
So it was kind of, I dug that when you sort of saw the little factions and things like that.
Yeah, the gangs and stuff like that. It very much had a Warriors vibe because, even sort of the way it was shot felt very much like the Warriors. So it was a nice little mixture because the other thing about it is if you've got an entire island turned into a prison, there's going to be some kind of life created there.
Yeah.
And so if part of that is for some group is to still do theatre productions, well, that's what you're going to get. So it was kind of good that it kind of showcased a bit of that.
Yeah, well, it was sort of like, as I said, it's a prison, but it's essentially you get dropped in here and that's your life. Like no one's getting out, but there's still kind of there's still a life to be lived in there, somewhat. So it does make sense.
Boy, I spoke before about Ernest Borgnine. I just loved his cab driver character. It's kind of like he was still working.
Yeah.
Somewhat. But then when he picks up Pliskin, he's talking to him like a normal cabbie would, but yet pulling out Molotov cocktails and hoiking them out the fucking window. It's kind of like what you would expect, but then twisted.
Yeah, exactly.
And he kind of is the only other character that... Actually, no, that's not true. Harry Dean Stanton and Adrian Barbeau have a bit more character sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think pays off at the end.
Yes.
But most of the characters, it's very much sort of fleeting.
It is.
Apart from Pliskin, it's kind of like Pliskin just hitting the ground and running into all these people who have short stints in the film.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Pliskin himself, this was in my likes. Like, his brooding is almost comical. It's kind of like, I don't know, it felt a little bit like Jack Burton, but without the overt kind of comedy. But yeah, he's constant kind of gravel in the voice and brain, you cross me again. Like, it worked for the piece because it is almost a comic-like storyline. It actually added a little bit of humour for me that he never kind of cut that and it sort of cut into the seriousness and made it a bit more enjoyable.
Well, I guess with the weirdness and sort of strange characters within the island, you needed a hero who wasn't who almost had that kind of comical style. Because imagine having a hero who was sort of bold, like just straight down the line. It just would have felt strange to have that.
Yeah.
It would have been at odds with what you had.
I think so.
And so in a way, Russell and Carpenter, I assume, probably discussed this at length, but they've come to the right sort of conclusion about how their hero should be. And I would agree. He's almost over the top broody.
He is.
It's just like...
He's never
he
not
cannot
broody.
drop for a second. He can't have a laugh. He can't fucking smile.
No, that's right.
I mean, it's just so heavily laid on, but there's a little bit of a wink to it.
I think so, yeah.
And I think that kind of works well for what we have here.
Yeah, it does.
I loved Duke's motorcade. I mean, there were chandeliers. One car had a pair of chandeliers on the outside.
I love that.
And Duke is driving along in the middle of a car chase.
Yep.
With a gigantic disco ball.
I was looking for more of the steam-powered action that they mentioned early on. I was looking for some sort of steam-powered contraption. Didn't quite get it.
Yeah, too much for the budget to handle.
Yeah. But no, that was funny. And it did, again, that sort of added that character to it, that sort of... Duke's got what you need. He's got a motorcade. Sometimes it requires chandeliers instead of headlights because we're living in New York that's been cut off from everywhere else. But he can get it done.
But it's kind of like how the sort of, I guess, the richest bloke in town, that's my assumption on him, like he's the most powerful man in town.
Yeah.
that's how he rolls when it's a lawless land.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right. It fits that tone, that ridiculous kind of, that ridiculous vibe to it. And I actually, I felt like I wished he'd come into it a bit earlier.
Yeah, kind of I think to create a villain for Pliskin to kind of play off.
Yeah. I think that would have been the way to go because he's the most powerful man in town. He's the complication. He's got the president. But it sort of feels a little bit compact. He doesn't seem like he's there for long. He is. I think it's about 40-odd minutes, but it still doesn't feel that long. Yeah,
I think it should have been set up early that he was around and then we get to know him. I mean, guess what they were trying to do is kind of step you through the hierarchy, so to speak. You know, Borgnine's your low-level guy, then you're on to Harry Dean Stanton and they're a bit higher up, got a bit more connection, and then you're on to the Duke. So I sort of see where they went, but I think he could have.
It does work in that way, but it feels like it's strung out a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, minor complaint. I was happy to have the Duke in there.
I too enjoyed the wrestling match or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
A strange sort of wrestling match mixed with gladiatorial stuff.
Yep.
And I really liked the bit where he's getting his ass handed to him and then he just pushes the big fella from the back and then just pulls out the bat and buries it in the back of his head.
That was awesome.
And everyone just goes silent.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? How did this guy manage to pull this off? So I really thought that was cool sort of shit.
Yeah, I thought that was good. He sort of takes he's getting his ass kicked, and it just takes that one little bit of an opening for him to get the job done.
And in a way, I actually saw something like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome took that.
Yeah, it felt like that. I mean, it's a classic kind of David and Goliath sort of setup, but it did have that. It did have that kind of feeling to it, especially given that Mad Max kind of shares the same sort of DNA, I guess.
Yeah, I like the bit that they're making their escape, and they kind of throw a little wrinkle into the mix. It's only a short wrinkle, but I liked it. They're making their escape, and they're trying to hotwire a car or trying to get a car started. And they open the bonnet and one of Duke's men's in there.
Yeah.
And then Duke's guys just come out from and surround them and then they're on the run again, you know. It's kind of like, you know, we're about to escape, now we're put back into a different situation. I kind of like that. It just kind of took things... It didn't make it simple.
Yeah, that was very cool.
For them.
Although Duke's men work fast. I mean, shit. How do you remove enough for that bloke to fit in there with, you know, what,
exactly.
a 15-minute window or... but I guess when you're the most powerful man in town, you can do that. You've got tools that are made out of the leftover parts of the chandelier that you've fucking latched onto the front of your truck and off you go. But no,
that's probably what it was for.
Yeah, that was... I really liked that because it was so unexpected, and as you said, it instigated this extra complication on the way to the finish line, I guess, which is... It's fairly standard stuff, but it's what you expect and what you want to raise the action a little bit.
Agreed. This was probably one of my personal favourite parts of it. The death of Cabby, which I actually felt held a little bit of emotion, even though, you know, Borgnine's not in it greatly. But he was kind of like the nicest character in a sea of shit, you know?
Yeah.
And so his death kind of... It's a bit disappointing that he doesn't make it through.
I'm wondering what he did to get in there, because he didn't seem to fit. Did he overcharge the wrong person on a fare or something and then get fucking tossed into New York?
That's right. Exactly. He didn't quite seem to fit the brief of all the other sort of strange and weird characters floating around, but
yeah,
I kind of liked him, so it was a bit disappointing that he didn't get through.
Yeah, it was.
It's kind of a double whammy because Harry Dean Stanton dies seconds later.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the whole thing where Snake says to Adrienne Barbeau, let's go, and she just looks at him like, nah. And she basically just stands and delivers to Duke as he's driving down the road.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a fuck you. I thought that actually held a bit of weight.
Yeah.
And Duke just runs her over, you know. I just thought, again, they were characters that were kind of likeable.
Yes. I mean, I was a big fan of the Brain character, even though great actor for one, but secondly, there's something about those characters that are sort of playing on their own team that always fits this theme.
Yeah.
You know, we mentioned Mad Max, how it's that lawless society. It's the same in Mad Max with, what's his name, Bruce Spencer's characters.
Yeah.
Where
Gyro.
they're not really working with you. They're working with you if you can help them get what they need. But if they see an opportunity, they're off. But then when then when the shit hits the fan, they're your best buddy again. There's something about it that fits for this setting, the lawless kind of land. And I think Harry Dean Stanton does a good job that you actually want him to make it through.
Yeah, even though he's morally not quite on the level.
No,
and he's willing to stab you back instantly.
Yes,
if he gets the opportunity. But there was a likability, and I liked the relationship between him and Adrian Barbeau. It kind of worked.
Yeah, and it seems to work because, you see them as doing what they need to do to survive, and then when you get to see some of their schemes, you think, you get to see some of their bloody huckster kind of acts that they use to get by. You kind of get a bit of comedic value out of it, and you start to like the characters for running this sort of this way of surviving.
Yeah, exactly. And it actually holds a bit of weight when they both die.
Yeah.
And sort of killing all three of those kind of, I guess you'd say, Pliskin's crew, in a sense, in like a 2-minute section there. Again, as we're racing towards the exit, it does hold weight because it's kind of like, well, we like those people and we wanted them to survive. That was part of what we were hoping for.
Mm.
But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. But I think it works well. Good old Donnie Pleasance going apeshit with a gun.
Oh, magic. I mean, he's fucking gleefully gibbering up the top.
He's shooting people left and right, including the Duke.
Yeah.
Loves it.
He's really
not a fan of
talking a bit of trash
Cadillacs
to the Duke.
with fucking disco balls.
Yeah. He really sort of, he talks a bit of trash to the Duke and lets him know all about it when he's on his way out. So, always a fan of seeing Donald Pleasance in a John Carpenter movie.
And it's classic Pleasance too, so he really loads up the ham. He opens the tin of Spam and continues to toss it around.
I mean, look, this is still an ongoing conversation. I'll say that he's possibly opened a can in this one, but if you tell me he's opening a can in Halloween again, I'm gonna blow up.
No, look, he really opens a can in Halloween too.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Quite frankly, he bought out the entire fucking supermarket of Spam and opened all of them on Halloween too.
It's called Gravitas,
although it gets
mate.
worse, I think, as he goes along.
He opened a few cans of Gravitas.
Couple of Gravitas cans. Yeah, he probably opens a can of Gravitas in Halloween.
From
Tom Atkins had opened several cans.
Onwards, it's a Spam factory. But Halloween 2, the courtroom and that sort of business, there's plenty of Gravitas being held there.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, anyone else delivering
and Tom
those
Atkins,
lines.
of course, was opening cans of Charisma.
Yeah.
Mixed with Old Spice.
Yep. A hint of stale beer.
Yeah. Cigarettes. Sex.
Oh, God.
That's his scent. What's Tom Atkins' scent? Like, if he had a cologne, what would it be?
Well, we've just that's what it is. There's notes of the beer.
But what would it be called, I wonder?
Good question.
TA.
Yeah, I'd call it Chalice myself. Chalice by Atkins.
Yeah, no, but the chalice version is just pure alcohol.
Yeah. The Chalmers version is a bottle
It's actually drinkable.
Yeah, it's a bottle of beer. You just spray all over yourself.
That was my final. Oh, look, I actually did like the end bit where he plays the tape.
Yeah.
And it's not the right tape.
Again, Donnie Pleasance, his face while that's playing, brilliant.
I just think it was a nice touch. It was a nice little twist.
Yeah.
That Pliskin had fucked him anyway, you know.
Yeah, correct.
And it kind of showcased that Pliskin once again was just like those other guys. He would turn on you if he had to.
Correct.
So I really liked that. It kind of played into that anti-hero stuff, and it just gave me the appropriate ending that I was after.
Yeah, the only thing I was questioning was, by the end of it, we don't really have a sense that the president is a bad guy. So I didn't get why Snake was fucking... Well, I got the sense that, the president just got back into it and just back into the swing of things and didn't really display the appropriate care about the people that had died when Pliskin sort of asked him the question. But other than that, I was sort of like, are we just saying the president is a bad person because he's the president? Is anyone who's a politician and is the president a bad person?
Well, that was kind of what they were going with. And Pliskin was kind of like, he didn't like the answer that he got, so he did what he would, like, this was Pliskin all over. This is what he would always do.
Yeah. Lighten up, Snake.
Yeah. I didn't have any other likes.
I actually had a couple that I forgot to mention, but there's a shot when Pliskin first moves down the floors when he gets into New York and someone scurries across the background. I loved it because I was looking at that and I just got Halloween. Just obviously because, directed by Carpenter, I just got this little bit of Halloween and I thought a little bit more of that would have done well to serve that sort of feeling of fear and the unknown when Pliskin was sort of first going into it. I really actually like that. I did mention the effects too, but I think I've got to give a mention to that standout one that they always kind of talk about that James Cameron put together when he's in the glider and the computer screen shows flying over New York and shows the outline of the buildings. And I didn't know it for such a long time, but it was, that Cameron and a few of the other guys put together models of the buildings and that was tape. They just put like reflective tape and shot it under a black light because computer effects were too expensive. And you watch it now and if you didn't know that, you still wouldn't pick up on it. It still looks like a computer image. Yeah. So
it's really impressive.
Yeah, very impressive.
I didn't know that James Cameron was even involved.
Yeah, I knew about the shot, but then it was only recently that I think it was on a commentary from Carpenter or an interview from Carpenter who basically said, that was James Cameron basically put that shot together.
Yeah, it's a really good shot.
Yeah,
and it works in 1981. And this probably segues into my dislikes. Obviously, the age of the film hurts some of the visual effects. They don't stand up, but that's to be expected. It's not really the film's fault. It's the age of this period of film plus the budget.
Yep.
Trying to kind of expand scope with little money is difficult. And so some of those shots are good, like as you said, the James Cameron one that you mentioned. Some of them are not, and that's just because it's an older film that didn't have the technology or the money.
Yep.
So it's probably hard to give that a kicking, but I think, if we're being dead serious, that it takes you out of the film watching it now.
For the most part, it does the job. But I feel where you lose that is that they set up this scope from the outside of the city when people are looking at it and when you see the skyline and the nighttime and things like that. But as soon as you get in there, you'd lose any sense that it's New York. It's just any old place with some buildings. And this is probably budget, but you don't get to see any. I mean, I'd imagine if it was made today, you'd get some sort of set piece in some fucking skyscraper or something like that that gives you the sense of the scale of New York City. You'd get something that involved landmarks in New York City. I mean, I felt like, and maybe I missed it, but I felt like when they go into the theatre, that's the perfect opportunity to say this is Broadway now. Or something. We're on Broadway and we go into the theatre and this is what you're watching. Like that, I think really hurt it because it's sort of, you go into New York City, escape from New York City. There's no more famous city in the world to set it. But when you actually get Snake into the city, you couldn't even tell it was New York City.
Yeah, they don't take advantage of it.
No, and it's, again, that's budgetary. I think they tried in a couple of elements, like the cab, take something, you know, that's synonymous with New York City and throw something like that in there. So that's why you get the character of Cabby. But like I said, I felt like there was a couple of opportunities to continue on with that sort of thing as well. But it just gets lost. And that, I think that's to its detriment. Yeah.
And look, my biggest dislike, and I mentioned it to the start, the scope isn't there. So all the ingredients are there for something really exciting. But because the scope's not there, and I said before, and I'm not knocking Carpenter because this isn't specifically his genre, so to speak, but it's not it's a touch light on action.
Yeah, it is.
Like, there's not a lot of shootouts or set piece or anything like that. And I know it was 1981, so as you say, we were almost 10 years away from this, or at least 5 or 6 years away from this sort of period where we had this golden period of really quality action films. But there's no real... I mean, Pliskin does very little when you actually look at it.
I mean, if we get this picture in 1992 and, Steven Seagal is finding his way into New York City, we could expect these set pieces, couldn't we? I tell you, the fight with the big wrestling bloke would have gone a little bit differently because if it was Steven Seagal, the wrestler never would have stood a chance. He wouldn't have been able to get a hand on him. He would have
been fucking talking about trying to teach him how to be a man or whatever the fuck he was doing on Deadly Ground.
Would have slapped him into oblivion.
I'm not saying that it doesn't, because to me it works more as a thriller. If you, because it's not action packed.
No, and
it's not.
The thing with that is, it's such a good action premise that it's sort of like if it's not packed full of action, you sort of feel a little bit let down.
Yeah, I mean, not greatly, because I think they make up for it by giving you that weird, that interesting society and that strangeness in the city and that lawless land. They give you that.
Yeah.
And I think that makes up for some of it. But I mean, I guess this is probably apples and oranges somewhat. But I look at Mad Max 2, which was made in the exact same year as this.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that is absolutely frenetic. You know, the action is just incredible.
Yeah.
Even today, like even looking at Mad Max 2 now,
it's still great.
I still can't get over that shot of that poor bastard hitting the flipping over about 50 times. You know,
breaking his leg, but we'll leave it in the film.
Look, John Carpenter didn't want to kill anyone. I understand that.
Yeah,
totally
John Carpenter
that.
didn't commit to putting his actors in danger. So, I mean, I'm sorry, and if you're not doing that, if you're not George Miller, at least George Miller's a doctor, as we mentioned before. He can help him on set. If something goes pear-shaped, Dr. Miller can roll in there and help out.
But it's chalk and cheese as far as the excitement level.
Yeah,
goes.
definitely.
Yeah, Mad Max is super exciting.
Yeah. If you don't have someone leaping off a truck onto another truck, I don't want to know you.
Yeah, exactly. While it's moving, should we shoot this with stunt cables and stuff? No, fuck that. Just get on there and do it.
But even something like The Warriors, which was set in New York, I'm a little bit biased because I do love that movie, but even it had similar things that I think could have worked for this movie. Like the whole thing about the Warriors, I mean, it's an even more straightforward premise. It's just that they have to, on foot, get through other territories of other gangs. And I feel like this could have done with some of that. I feel like this could have done with Pliskin coming to, having to get through. Like, why couldn't he have, when he was first tracking the president's wristband, I know he goes through a couple of people, but why couldn't he have come across some gang's territory that didn't want him to pass or something like that? And we get a bit of a blue there and a bit of action there, and
perhaps get a showcase of his skills.
Yeah,
because that's the other thing that's missing. We know that Pliskin is an ex-member of the Special Forces, and we know that he robbed the Federal Reserve, and we know that he's a bad motherfucker. But we never really see it in the sense of we don't see his skill sets.
No, that's right.
And this is where I come back to Carpenter. None of the action scenes are shot with, like, the fights, the choreography of the fights are a little bit poor. The shootouts aren't exactly, pulse pounding. And I think it's possibly because Carpenter's a much better director of the slow build and the slow burn.
Yeah.
And you see it in Halloween, you see it in The Thing, and that shit works a treat for those movies.
I think that's fair. And I feel like what we're talking about could have pepped up a couple of those dull spots where they were moving from one sort of story point to another, but you just had 5 to 10 minutes where it just felt like not much was going on.
Yeah. And a big-time explosion somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Just liven things up a little.
Again, much like Larry Cohen last week, we're telling John Carpenter all about filmmaking, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And look, I'm not in any way, shape or form saying Carpenter can't handle any of this stuff as a director. He can, but it's not his bag.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And even something like that, like They Live, which I think is a better sort of, it has better action set pieces because it's partial action film, partial sort of horror film. And the fight between Roddy Piper and Keith David,
it goes for a solid awesome. 10 minutes.
But you listen to any interviews with Keith David, and he was interviewed in that Searching for Darkness documentary on Shudder. And he says, him and Roddy Piper they sort of matched it. They just sort of choreographed it out.
Yeah.
And because Piper was a wrestler, it's kind of what you get.
Well, that's his bag.
Get a great sort of choreography to it.
You get 10 minutes of testicle pounding action.
Yeah, exactly. But Carpenter's better. His action sort of work is better in They Live, but it's still not, I don't believe, what he's most comfortable with.
No, and I guess the thing that's missing from this one that you see more of in They Live is he has a chance to do, I mean, that's more of that sci-fi setup where he has a chance to explore a bit of that sort of social commentary and a bit of the there's different things to explore. Same with The Thing. You get a few portions of action in The Thing, but that suits his slow build business up to a T because it's got a bit of that. It's got a bit of that sort of gory horror stuff in it, and you've got that whole vibe of we don't know who this is, so that suits him down to the ground. Whereas this doesn't feel like it's got as much of those things. It is just supposed to be just a pure sort of action ride.
Yeah. So I would probably put this more as a thriller with slight action undertones. And again, that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's not super exciting.
But to me, even then, it's not a thriller. It doesn't have the elements that I would put in a thriller. So it's for me, it sits in action, but it's not super exciting action movie fare.
Yeah, so it's kind of weirdly placed.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. It's definitely got those elements that he is good at that would fit thrillers and slashes and And so that's probably going towards your point of saying that, it's maybe not his preferred genre and his preferred style, and that kind of shows.
And $6 million, based on what they were reaching for, is not a lot.
No.
No, it's not a lot. Because they were reaching, and they don't quite get there because, as you say, once they get inside the walls of Manhattan, it doesn't feel like New York City.
No.
And that's your budget.
Yep.
In play.
Yep.
With Pliskin, we were talking about Pliskin before, the one thing he lacks is a truly memorable one-liner. Or something of that nature.
Well, that and a truly memorable kind of action scene. Even the wrestling fight is kind of fun, but it doesn't stand out as one of the all-time great sort of action sequences, which is, what you've just said is the reason why I kind of don't see him up in the tier with some of those other guys that he gets put in sometimes.
He hasn't got an if it bleeds, we can kill it, or something like that.
No. Certainly lacking something,
which is disappointing because I think you throw that in and you give him a real nice set piece. Yeah, his stock goes up.
Yeah, and when you get to the sequel and he shows off his basketball skills and his surfing skills, that's what we're looking for. Those real kind of big chickens.
I forgot about that. Oh my God, I forgot about Escape from LA and all its bloody wank about playing basketball and surfing with Peter Fonda and all this fucking bullshit. I read something the other day saying Carpenter says that Escape from LA is the better picture, and I'm like, what are you on? You've lost your mind on that.
I've actually got to watch it again, I think, because I'm not sure that I finished it, to be honest. But I've seen those sequences.
That tells you where it was at.
Well, I think because it seems to have got this reputation as just this kind of fun ride, even though it's just ridiculous. But I remember it being, the effects are a whole different kettle of fish because they're early computer effects. So they're worse than the effects in this one because despite, losing a bit of the scope and whatever, the scope's not great if it's a giant tsunami that you're surfing that looks like shit. Like, I don't think that works. But yeah, that basketball sequence is an absolute favourite of mine.
Yeah, it's a shocker.
Yeah.
But that's why you need... See, looking at Escape from New York, you need $100 million budget for Escape from New York.
Yeah, I think you do because
you want to get that scope
do those big
and you want to do what they're asking. You need $100 million.
You need some cash.
You can then go the places that they wanted to go.
Yeah, even if you can't go to all those places, you can certainly make some places look like New York with the computer effects now, which Carpenter never had the option to do.
Exactly. So that's not his fault, and I said it before. $6 million, they did a damn good job.
Yeah. With
$6 million.
Yep.
Which it's the same way I feel about when I watch Jaws. And I sit there and I think they had $9 million, and Jaws is an outstanding picture for that type of money. In that era. And I think Escape from New York deserves the same sort of credit for having such a little amount of money in the scheme of things and being able to push it as far as they can. But it comes with a few negatives, unfortunately.
Yeah, they reached for the stars here and, they only had enough money to build a rocket to, get them halfway there, I guess.
Well, really, they were skydiving. Yeah, because they were reaching a long way for what they were after.
Yeah. They're not...
But you know what? It's a pretty damn good skydive.
Yeah, they're not saying escape from some fucking random rural town that we have enough money to shoot in. Yeah. They're saying the biggest city in the world.
Escape from Yes.
Yes.
It's not like that. They're swinging for the fences, and they kind of give you a single, or maybe a double.
Yeah, yeah.
So They do pretty well under the circumstances, but there are problems with it.
Correct.
The only other thing I had was, is it not strange that the President of the United States sounds like an Englishman?
Yeah, well, this has been brought up a few times. It is strange. But then we had the governor of California who sounded like Arnold Schwarzenegger sounds. So it's not that far-fetched, is it? Really?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I forgot about that.
It seems the funny thing to me is there's parts where he's just talking like he normally talks, but there's a couple of times where it seems like he's trying to bung on an accent. Like when they're trying to get in the car and he's like, "Come on, we're wasting time." It sounds like he's trying to bung on an American accent for one or two scenes there, and then he's just back to,
"Come on, Donald."
Oh, bugger it,
Yeah. And then you hear the sound of a can going, opening up. And a lump of spam flies out.
Oh, man.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, it could have. I mean, I don't know what it was. Was Donald again on a short couple of day gig and not getting paid as much as he should have? Because maybe that was it. He's just like, I'm giving you what you're paying for. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do it, but you won't get the accent.
Yeah, that's right. You pony up, you'll get an accent out of me.
For that. No, it's just strange that he's an Englishman.
It is strange.
You could have got any other actor to do that. Atkins.
Well,
T. Atkins could have been the president.
That it seems too perfect. It seems too good a fit. That would have made the film better, no question. We could have chucked Pleasance into some other role in there.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand why he's there. He was kind of like a Carpenter mainstay with Dr. Loomis and Halloween 2 and stuff like that, where he'd obviously been around. So I appreciate him being there, and he's certainly not unwelcome. It just seems weird that he's they've got an Englishman playing the president and they don't even bother to hide the fact that he's fucking still English.
No, that's right.
I mean, that was the strange bit.
I had one more, and it was a sort of specific one. Brain getting into the room with the president. No one's letting him into that room.
Yeah.
I mean, the president's already been taken once. He seems to be less guarded this time. Everyone else is at the fight. So he's been left with Romero or whatever his name is.
Yeah, that's right.
Who doesn't appear to have a gun or anything. And then
there's a couple of others in there too, isn't there?
There's a couple of others in there, but
Brain
even when they
stabs Romero and
she
Adrian Barbeau
shoots them. Maybe they had guns. I couldn't. I didn't quite catch it on that, but I just felt like, we're going to the effort of calling this bloke Brain and talking about the schemes that he sort of runs with, and the one that we see him run is just, Duke told me to come in.
Yeah,
he gets
a little bit kind of convenient.
Yeah, he gets the no, you didn't, and then he starts talking about the cyanide in the hair and all that sort of thing.
And look,
just didn't quite work out for me. That was the one point where I was just like, that was just kind of butchered.
But you hit the nail on the head, though. Pliskin had already intercepted the president and taken him. And then they had to get him, they had to stop Pliskin, and they did, and they got the president back. So you leave him pretty underguarded while everyone else goes to watch WrestleMania downstairs.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems a bit of a strange thing to do. Maybe it's because they thought with Pliskin being indisposed, it's unlikely that anyone's going to do this. And they trusted Brain. I think that's kind of what I got out of it. But
yeah,
it was pretty sort of conveniently done.
Yes, I wasn't a big fan of that. Again, not a deal breaker, but it was just a sort of standout scene for me where I thought that just really flopped.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, that was it.
All right, that was Escape from New York. Look, only a sprinkle of Atkins in that one, but pretty decent. Pretty decent sort of stuff. Atkins he'll never let you down, even when he's only doing a 5-minute role.
Exactly.
He would have been working on his fragrance.
Yeah, that's right. He had bigger things.
So he only had a
think
couple
about.
of days to work with.
Correct. He didn't. He was thinking about his brand at that point.
Exactly. He was ahead of the curve, mate. It was 1981. No one was having brands, but Atkins, Chalice by Atkins, was currently in the pipeline.
Exactly.
All right. You can find us on Podomatic, iTunes and Spotify. Send us an email at thrillme@iinet.net.au. We're on Facebook at Thrill Me Podcast Australia, Podomatic at thrillme.podomatic.com, and Instagram at thrillmepodcastau. Jump on there and rate and review us wherever you can find us. Our next episode, another Atkins cameo. I've got some problems with Atkins in this next one, so stay tuned. That is 1982's Creep Show. But until then, take it easy, and we'll catch up with everyone later. Cheers. Find the podcast at Podomatic or on iTunes. Don't forget to rate and review. Like us on Facebook at Thrill Me Podcast Australia, or contact us at thrillme, all one word, all lowercase, at iinet.net.au.